everybody, and welcome to CDK Live. That intro, every single time, I can tell these three guys here are pumped. Like, you guys pumped? Did that get you pumped up?
That's right.
Yeah, very pumped.
Good. Anyway, welcome to the show. So this episode is this is going to be a really fun show. All the hotness right now is around generative AI and all the cool opportunities that folks are taking advantage of out there to build really cool applications on top of Gen AI. And the CDK, the CDK is a just rapidly growing and evolving infrastructure as code tool. And when you bring the two of them together, it's just, it's a match made in heaven. So I'm really looking forward to going through this today. We do have some folks already saying hello in the chat. So if you are in the chat and you want to say hello, please, we like to know who you are, where you're from. And forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Vidit did post something on Twitter. Actually, it was really cool. I think this is the same person, but they posted one of our videos. We walked through building a construct on your own and then publishing that construct, to NPM. They did that, posted on Twitter. Really cool story. Really cool to see folks coming in here, watching our videos, and then building on them. So let's get started. Why don't we do some intros? Just everyone say hello, and then we're going to dive right into it. And we'll start with some questions. So okay, it is the same person, so I'm not crazy. Okay, cool. All right, and then we got Gary. Hey Gary, how you doing? Okay, so Hader, why don't you go ahead and say hello, and then we'll go.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. I'm AWS Solution Architect, and looking forward to share the Generative AI Construct library and the sample repo.
Awesome. I can go next. Hi, my name is Alan, AWS Solutions Architect. Also, thank you so much for having us. A lot of fun today for this session.
Hi there, my name is Michael Turan, and I'm also a solution architect. And we're excited to share what we've built over the last few months.
Awesome. And, solutions architects at AWS are like the brains that are out there working with customers, talking about, helping customers, come up with solutions, to build their architectures, their environments, and, following good practices and doing all the right things. So these are the folks that are on the ground that are really talking to customers every day and then coming back and building really cool stuff like the Generative AI CDK Construct library. So really quick, we have folks from Italy. We got Mario from Italy. How you doing? Italy, that's pretty cool. And then we got Paul. Paul, how you doing? And then we got Andre, who's originally from Brazil, living in London. Nice. Okay, I think everyone on this show right now is in the United States at the moment. So, and I know Alan we were going to do this show last week. There's been storms where he lives, and there's storms today, but hopefully he stays through the whole stream and we're all good. So guys, why don't we start with, what is this Generative AI CDK Construct library, and, go from there.
Sure, I can take that one. So the AWS Generative AI Construct library is like a treasure chest for developers. It's got a ton of cool pre-built tools that we have developed over the last few months that have some prescriptive guidance. Think of these as like Lego sets for AI. They're pre-built patterns with a lot of different pieces that will help you build your application to production along the way. Right now, we currently support Node.js and Python, but let's take also a few steps back on like the different kinds of constructs and taking that analogy of Legos to another level. So level 1 constructs are kind of like these basic Lego pieces that you generally have. And level 2 are kind of a pre-built wall for maybe a city that you're building. And level 3 constructs are our whole building that has a full set of detailed instructions that has an architecture, maybe even like think of it when comparing that building to a 3-tier application on AWS. We bundle up the best practices and patterns. And so you're not just building a part of the project, but something that's can be part of a whole ecosystem. So I hope that answers a little bit about what the Generative AI Construct library and how that fits within the broader CDK, ecosystem.
I love that. And, so we do have a video. Oh, that link is terrible coming up on the banner. I did share it in the chat though, but we do have a video on this channel where we do walk through the 3 levels of constructs. I love your explanation, Michael. And I think this is one of the things that, I wrote a blog recently about kind of where the CDK has gone over the past few years and how far it's come and all the cool problems that it solves. And I think when people first look at the CDK, they think, it's cool, I can define my infrastructure as code using a general programming language. And that is great on its own. Like, you can leverage control flows, loops, and do all these really great things that you could do natively in a programming language. But it's these abstractions through these constructs that are so powerful. And I think a lot of folks don't understand or don't know when they're new to coming into the CDK that this is actually the biggest value proposition for this tool.
It is indeed.
So I guess why don't let's talk about the kind of the problem y'all wanted to solve. So, you've been working with the CDK for some time. All of these great services have come up from AWS that kind of enable users to access generative AI, tooling and services at like kind of in an easier way, more accessible way. Why did you decide to create this library?
Sure. So as everyone knows, like the generative AI landscape has been evolving so quickly. And a lot of times developers get into this paralysis of like so many decisions have to be made. So we approach this with developing these constructs with some prescriptive guidance of like, oh, this is what we've found success. And hopefully we can release this and make everyone's life a little easier. So this library gives everyone a little head start with some pre-built patterns that are already tried and tested. It's like kind of like a blueprint for success. So if you're new to the Gen AI scene, you're not missing out a lot in terms of like the nitty gritty part, but you can also, because it's hosted on GitHub and you can look at the code itself, you can actually understand why we arrived at this. We also have a number of like blog posts that will dive deeper into the decisions that we made. And we'll go into that later down the line in this call.
Awesome. And, it does make me think. So, when we look at the landscape today, there's a lot of tools out there. So there's, Code Whisperer, which is like available on at the CLI level, is available in my IDE, and then integrates with all of these services. I have Amazon Q, which same thing. So I guess, how does this fit into all of those tools? And I guess if I'm someone that's watching this right now, when am I using these constructs and when am I building on these versus just leveraging, one of these other services that I mentioned?
That's a great question. So think of Code Whisperer, Amazon Q, and Bedrock like special tools in this treasure chest, right? So each have specific tasks that they're really great at. For example, Code Whisperer is really great at code generation. And then our Generative AI CDK Construct library is really helping you build a whole project from the ground up, or integrating all these other tools that you might have or existing AWS infrastructure and connecting that into, maybe a RAG model or some kind of UI for generative. This is supposed to help your development process become a little easier and smoother without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure.
Awesome. And so there was a question in here if we can post the repo. So I'm going to share that in the chat, but we're also going to go through it right now. So why don't we do that? Let's dive into like getting started. And actually, while we do that, let's also talk about, what's available. So as I, get started with this, when am I jumping in here? What are the constructs that are available to me right now? And if we want to share a screen and get started, we can do that too. Just let me know.
Yeah, I can take that one. Can you see my screen? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. So this is the repo that we have on GitHub. So actually, just before I go through the catalog, you have this main README here that gives you an intro. And you have a few steps on how you can get started. So it's super easy. Like Mike said, we released those constructs for both TypeScript and Python. So you can create a new CDK application, or you can use an existing one that you already have. And then you just run npm install with the specific package, or pip install for Python. And then you just import this library. That's it. And then you have access to all the constructs that we will go through. So,
and really quick, something I wanted to mention, and I think you mentioned this earlier too, but just for folks watching. So today, the two supported languages are TypeScript and Python. I imagine if there was another language, CDK supported language that folks wanted to see these constructs in, how would they request that? Just submit an issue? What would you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that we build is based on user feedback and requests. So you can go to the issues on GitHub, and we have different type of issues actually. So you can submit a new one. If you have a bug that you want to report, any issue with the documentation, or even if you have a feature request, so like supporting a new type of language, if you have a new feature that you want to see in one of the patterns, a new pattern also that you're interested in, and so on. So you can do this very easily through here.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, and we can have a look now at the catalog with the different constructs that we have available. So just to introduce those two constructs that we have here. So one common use case that we have with generative AI is to build applications that can allow our users to ask questions about the specific source of information, right? So you may have like an FAQ, you may have some insurance policy documents, things like that, and you want your foundation model to access those data. So those models, they can reason about a wide ranging topics, but their knowledge is really limited to the data that they've been trained on at a specific point in time, right? So if you use a model and you ask a question about some specific data that you have, some private data, the model might either say, I don't know, or it can hallucinate. So it means it can very confidently give you a wrong answer, right? So there is a technical RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation, that will allow us to retrieve information from this external knowledge base and get the relevant data that we can feed to the model, so it can generate more accurate responses with up-to-date information and reduce those hallucinations. So typically in RAG, we have two main components. The first one is the indexing. So it's a pipeline that will ingest data from a source and will index it. So that's what this first construct will allow us to do, the data ingestion pipeline. And then we have the second step, that's the retrieval and generation. So retrieve information from that knowledge base that is relevant and provide all those information to the model so it can generate an answer. And that's an example that we have here in the question answering the second construct. So if you go to a specific construct, each construct has a README that is structured the same way, just for consistency. So you have a table of content that will provide you an overview that explains like what is the pattern doing, how it works. You have all the properties, some information on how to troubleshoot, and you have the architecture. So for this one, we can jump right here, just so you can have an idea of what is provided here. So for this construct, all the services that you see here, but the Amazon OpenSearch cluster and Cognito, are bundled and provided with this construct. So we will show a code snippet after, just how to use it. But all this entire workflow, you can incorporate it into your existing app just in a few lines of code. And that's something that, as Mike mentioned, that is already tested, that works, and that can provide you those features in your application. So what happens here? Basically, we provide some assets into an Amazon Simple Storage service bucket, some PDF files for now. That's the format that's supported. And then we have a client application that can trigger a mutation to ingest those documents by specifying the file name. And that will trigger a workflow through step functions that will validate those inputs. Then it will extract the text from your PDF files, and it will store it into another bucket. And the last step, it will take this text content and it will actually chunk it into smaller pieces, because the models have a limited context window. So it's easier to have smaller chunks. and it's harder to search over big chunks in general. And then we will create what we call embeddings. So here we use Amazon Bedrock. We will convert this text into embeddings and store them into a vector database. So, and then the result of this is sent back, and you can get it through a subscription here.
So, Alan, there was a really good question that came in that would be really cool to address. So, when we talk about this architecture, first of all, I just want to say, like, it's really cool when this is a great example of a construct that does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. There's a specific use case, and we've kind of built all of these components within this construct that you just plug in kind of your specific details as to how you want to see this construct and everything get deployed. And then the construct handles all the heavy lifting and building all these resources. Now, the question that came in was, we're using AppSync in this architecture. Was there a reason why we chose AppSync instead of API Gateway or some other front end?
Do you want to take that one, Mike? I know that was a lot of debate.
Yeah, we actually get this question a lot, and we posted it into LinkedIn a few months ago to have this kind of discourse. So one of the problems that we had was that when we're making a query to our RAG model, a lot of times this query can take over 30 seconds, and then this is generally where it times out with API Gateway. So there's kind of two ways that we can go about this. One is keeping the WebSocket open. And we took the approach with subscriptions with GraphQL, because as that change happens in the backend, it will then push the change to the front end without the need for a pull or push on with traditional API Gateway. So we took that approach, and we're definitely open to and feel free to make a feature request to carrying those same principles to API Gateway. But we found this principle to be successful, meeting the actual use case and problem space that we were trying to solve.
Awesome answer. And someone in the chat actually answered that beautifully as well. So just to confirm what you said. So Mike's not lying. We have someone that confirmed. No, I'm just kidding. That was really well said. Okay, go on, Alan. Thanks for answering.
Awesome. So now how we can deploy this. So if we go up and we have the specific code snippet here. Sorry, here for TypeScript. So as we installed the library, we just import this construct. And then as we mentioned, we ask you to provide an existing domain for OpenSearch and an existing Cognito user pool. And then you just need a few lines of code, and that's it. And this will deploy in your account this entire workflow that we just saw.
And by the way, I could, in this CDK app, I could build the OpenSearch cluster here, the user pool here, and then pass those in as well, right?
Absolutely. Right. And that's something we will see during the demo with Hazer, where we have a full application that's composing different constructs to build a Doc Explorer.
Amazing.
And then we can see the construct props. So how you can basically customize this construct. So if you want to reuse like an existing bucket that you have, if you want to pass your own VPC, and so on, we have many different properties that you can specify. And then it's going to be based also on user feedback. Like if you see that specific moving part that you want to be able to modify in the construct, just you can open an issue and we will work on extending it.
Or submit a pull request. Could someone do that as well?
That's the dream. If you have time and you want to contribute, that's the best way. We have some issues actually that are tagged already. Now that you mentioned it, also as good first issue. So those ones are usually easier tickets that you can use to get started in understanding how the library works and contributes. And then if you want to work on bigger issues, you can look also here if anything is already in the backlog. So you can assign yourself a ticket and work on it, or just open a new one.
Awesome. So are we thinking of a demo, or did I jump did I jump a little far ahead here? You tell me.
We have a few other constructs. I can give a quick overview of them before we jump to the demo. So we have, as I mentioned, the Q&A pattern that you can compose actually with the data ingestion pipeline, and that's something that Heather will demonstrate. So very similar architecture. Again, everything is bundled that you get through the construct. So a user will post a question here, again through AppSync, that will trigger a Lambda function, and it will go and retrieve the relevant information from an open search cluster. So you can reuse, if you compose constructs together, you can reuse the same open search instance, right? So you will ingest some documents, and then you can ask a question here, and you can retrieve the relevant information from that knowledge base. And then we enrich the prompt with the user question and those relevant information to Anthropic Claude on Amazon Bedrock to generate an answer. And same principle, you will get the results back through the subscription. It has another feature also in case you don't want to use RAG, but you want to use long context window. So some models can accept, like Anthropic Claude version 2.1, a huge context window. So you can try to pass the entire document to the model instead of using a RAG approach. So this pattern.
Could you quickly just explain the difference between like when you would want to use RAG versus context window approach?
Yeah, so that's actually when we're doing tests, we usually got better results when using the long context window because we were passing more data from the document to the large language model, so it was able to generate more accurate answers. Another use case here can be if you have a question that you want to ask against the entire knowledge base and not just one document, you can use RAG then because it will find relevant information against everything that's stored in your index.
Awesome. And a question came in, are you using Claude 2.1 or Instant?
So right now we're using 2.0. We have a PR that is coming to upgrade to 2.1. And then we have also a ticket in the backlog to just expand it to other models on Bedrock, just to give more flexibility to the users.
Awesome.
All right. Quickly, we have summarization. That's another pattern that you can use, where you will have some documents that are stored in S3. You submit a request, and we have a step function workflow here that will go take those documents, submit a query to the LLM to generate a summary for each document and send it back to the subscription here. It will also store the summary in a cache. Here using Elasticache for Redis. So if you just make the same request, it will just, for an existing document that was summarized, it will just pull this information from the cache. Finally, we have two other big constructs that are a bit different, that are not those L3 patterns, but that are still useful tools that we found out when building those Gen AI apps. So one is a Lambda layer. Actually, you see that we use Lambda a lot in those serverless architectures. And one thing that we're doing is we're using dependencies. Like for the orchestration, we use LangChain, for instance, and we have other dependencies that we keep using in all those different Lambdas. So for sustaining, we found it better to just create a Lambda layer that we could share across those different Lambda. And that's something we can expose also to the user. So you have a construct here that will actually use a requirement.txt file that is available here. And it will generate a Lambda layer with those different libraries, dependencies. So then you can quickly build a Lambda and you already have those dependencies. So this repetitive process is just made way easier for you. And you have a flag that you can pass auto upgrade if you want a later version than the ones that we have in our requirement.txt. It will just upgrade those packages. Another one that we have also here is a common layer that contains some Python helpers, actually, when we're building an application. So for instance, if you look at making an API call to Bedrock and you use Boto3, you can see here that you have some code where you need to specify the format request that you will send to the model. So it will contain the prompt, and every model has a different input-output structure for the data. So some will expect some keywords, like here, like in the prompt human, that will understand that this is the part of the user query. And you have some parameters that you want to pass. You need to specify the model ID and so on, and then invoke Bedrock. So we have something called a registry here. So you can, the same way, just build that layer and add it to your Lambda function very easily. Then we have a registry that supports a list of models from Bedrock. And just in a few lines of code here, you can actually make requests at runtime without having to type the specific code for each of the different models. So here, for instance, I will make an event. And in my input request, I will specify the provider, which is Bedrock, and the model ID, so Claude V2, if I want to enable streaming or not, and my question. And at runtime, I can change it for a different model. And I don't have to retype the code and so on. So it just makes it easier for testing different models. So this one will evolve. Of course, we will add more helper functions as we're building also more constructs. And
it's fair to say that at this point, the majority of these constructs are L3 constructs. They're patterns essentially. So they're very kind of a clearly defined use case and pattern, and they can quickly get you up and running. And we have a couple other constructs that are a little lower level, L2, that if you're kind of building on your own, these can help you. You can use these constructs to get moving a little faster as you build on your own.
Exactly.
Cool. There was a question from Tex and Raj. Do you have an example with Postgres or PG Vector?
Not at the moment. We're just working with OpenSearch, but that's something you can open an issue about to just support like other vector databases.
Cool.
And finally, the last construct about Sagemaker. So as Mike mentioned, like right now, if you look at the generative AI stack on AWS, we have 3 layers. So we have the first one with the applications that leverage foundation models like Amazon Q, Code Whisperer. Then we go one level deeper, and we have tools to build with foundation models like Bedrock that we see we're using in the different constructs. And finally, the third layer will be the infrastructure for foundation model training and inference, right? So the lower you go, the more flexibility you have, but the more expertise also is usually required to build applications. So if we need to deploy a model that's not available, for instance, on Amazon Bedrock, we can use Sagemaker. And specifically, we can look at Sagemaker Jumpstart. That's a machine learning hub that contains some solutions and some ready-to-use models that we can deploy on Sagemaker hosting services. And we can get an endpoint that we can use directly for inference. Those endpoints, they're fully managed. They support auto-scaling. And from Sagemaker Jumpstart, we make it very easy for you to consume those models. So from the UI, you can just go select a model that's available on the catalog, click a button, and deploy it. Now, another way of deploying those models is using the SDK. So you can spin up a notebook instance and deploy this model. But how can we do that from the CDK? So that's what we offer through the first construct here, which is the Sagemaker model deployment for Jumpstart. So in just 2 lines of code, you can deploy a model from Jumpstart. So we have a code generation step that we run in the library that will go and pull all the available models with their specifications from Jumpstart. And then we provide you with a strongly typed model here. And you can just do Jumpstart model dot, and you have access to all the models. So super easy. You just select, for instance, here, the Llama 2.7b version 2.0.2. the instance type, and that's it. And that will spin up the SageMaker endpoint with Llama 2, and you can send queries actually and get response back. Now we have another hub if you want to use models that are not necessarily available on SageMaker Jumpstart, which is Hugging Face, that has hundreds of thousands of models available. So we have a construct here that is very similar to deploy to a SageMaker endpoint, a Hugging Face model. So same thing, a few lines of code. You can go to Hugging Face and select a model. You just need to select the model name. So at the top of the screen, you can just copy paste that. The instance type, and then you can specify the container. So SageMaker endpoints use containers to spin up and serve your models. So for now, we support all the models that are supported by this specific container provided by Hugging Face, the TGI container. And you can have the list of all the supported models. I can send you that link to share. That can be used and deployed also in just a few lines of code. And the last construct that we have, so it's for use cases that are a bit more custom. So maybe you fine-tune the model, maybe you train a model from scratch, and you want to deploy it also. So we provide you with this custom endpoint that we call constructs. And here you can specify the model ID that will be used to tag your resource, the instance type, container, so you can use a publicly available container, or you can specify your own ECR repo, the location of your data in S3, so the output of your training, the name of your endpoints, and additional parameters that you can pass here. So we try to really simplify here this experimenting with different models from different providers.
So, so all this, knowing all these kind of these various use cases that we solved today, what are we looking at as far as kind of next? What's next? What's on the roadmap? What are we looking to build out? You know, because it's never enough. So.
Yeah, Mike, you want to take that on?
So we have a full breadth of issues in our backlog, but we're also taking in actual customer use cases of, like, for example, instead of open search, we want to use Kendra, or can it connect to a chatbot with like Connect? So there's a number of customer use cases as well as things in our backlog that you can see on GitHub of what we're going to be working on next. So anything that, you know, resonates with you that are watching at home, feel free to go into that issue that you find that is really interesting and +1 it, or, you know, elaborate on your actual use case, and then we can add in a different kind of priority list as time goes on for us to work on next.
Awesome. Okay, so if we're on track here, I think our next step is to actually demo this and show how we can take one of these constructs, deploy it, and see what the end result is.
That's right, and I can take that. And now that you know that you have those building blocks available to you, and like you said, Adam, at the beginning, like the main benefit of using CDK is to create abstraction layer. The idea now that you have access down below is, what if you would like to create an AI system that most likely gonna combine or use multiple of those constructs that we presented so far. So one example that we're gonna show now is how you can leverage those 3 top constructs that you see here into an application. So if you go to the sample repo, you're gonna see that we have a few sample applications to showcase end-to-end those constructs in a system AI. And the document explorer, like you can see here down below, and actually let me make this a little bit larger. So we are using 3 constructs here, and to make it simple, at the very top we have the document ingestion. So whenever you upload a new file, we're gonna take care of creating the embeddings, saving on the Elasticsearch, and make it part of the knowledge base. Then you can call the summarization and ask question for this endpoint. And another thing that this sample repo does for you is, since we have 3 endpoints here, we merge those 3 endpoints into one single endpoint and integrate with Cognito and provide you a client application so you can see how to make a call for those endpoints. And maybe this is going to be helpful for the user that was asking about REST API and GraphQL. Having this sample application, they're going to have a way to see how to make those calls in GraphQL. The structure of the code is pretty simple. Like if you scroll down a little bit, you're gonna see that everything is abstracted in this Document Explorer application, CDK application. And this CDK application uses 3 components. One is to create the all infrastructure related resource like VPC, subnets, and other stuff that we need to provide in order to deploy the CDK constructs. Then we have the persistence layer that this is what you see in the gray area here, because most of those components that you see here, like the constructs that we are using, refer to where we're going to save the document, where we're going to save the transformed and open search and so on. And we are creating this as a separate stack so we can refer across different constructs. And the last one is the API, where we actually create those resources. You're going to see that's straightforward. Like all you need to do is fulfill those requirements that we have here, clone the repo, go to the folder and deploy. And once you do that, after you do that, you're going to have access to a simple application. So this is my application running in my local environment right now. One thing that we tried to do here was to create 3 different pages so you can see interact with all those 3 components that I mentioned before, like the document ingestion, summarization, question and answer. And you can see this in the repo as well. Like I can go back to the code and give you more details, but just to give an example how things is working here, you can go to select a document, browse any document that you have. So I'm using Amazon shareholder letter here, for example. Once you click enter and select the file, it's going to kick off the pipeline, and we can actually see this, what's going on behind the scenes. So if I go to my AWS console that I deployed that, I can see the execution being done to process this file that I just made. So this is the step function that's showing what's going on behind the scenes. So we receive the file, we transform to txt, create the embeddings and save them to the open search endpoint. And now you are ready to call to make a summary of this document. So if I click here, it's gonna call the endpoint to make a summary of the document. And again, behind the scenes is working the step function that's processing this file and generated the file for you. So if I go back to my step function console, you're going to see that there is another execution here for summarization that I just did. And the workflow is like that. I received the request asking for create a summary of a specific document. I check if this document is available in the cache already. If it's not, I call the summarization model to make a call to Bedrock and generate this output and save in the cache. And if you access the same file again, it's gonna go through this path that it actually went. That's retrieving the summary from the cache. So you can do this for all the documents that you have here, or upload your own document. Let me see if there is any questions so far.
Yes, there was a good question that came up. And one thing I wanted to ask in addition to this is, there may be folks here watching who are, doing this in personal AWS accounts, trying to test things out. I'm sure, obviously, there's costs associated with this. And I saw a really nice thing was in the constructs. There was a section for cost, which was really cool. So 2 questions. One, I guess, what is the cost consideration if I want to deploy this demo app? And then 2, in addition, with what Juan's saying, Are there any type of special considerations when testing these constructs out?
Good. Michael, would like to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, so obviously cost was covered, but also permissioning. So a lot of the workshops that surround Bedrock will walk you through on enabling the models that are required. That's like one of the prerequisite steps that our documentation also walks you through. Then also like permissioning, because you're spinning up a ton of resources, making sure that you have the correct IAM role that's associated with being able to deploy OpenSearch, VPCs, all the related infrastructure will knowing the correct roles that you have and what is required will help you not get those errors when you're running CDK deploy and then it rolls back everything and then you have to go fix the IAM role. So that's probably some of the major inhibitors I could potentially see. If there's any other ones that are specific.
Yeah, and like you said, Adam, like in each construct here, there is a section to dive deep on the costs related to deploying these. So you can have an example of those things, what you're gonna expect to have once deploying or using those constructs.
Yeah, and one thing
Perfect.
on top of the cost, we also have a security section. So for each construct, we provide some additional details on things you can pay attention to. So list to the different services that are used to just get the best practices in terms of security. And also if we take, for instance, the Q&A or the RAG, to make sure that any document that you ingest, you need to validate them to make sure that they're not harmful and they comply with your specific company policy.
Yep.
Very good points. And so just, to summarize that, if you're testing this out, just be aware, there are costs associated as you test this. So just make sure if you test, it's cool. Delete it when you're done. But I just want to add that these constructs, like, even if they don't, they're not solving your exact problem, but they're a start to a problem that you're trying to solve, you can build on top of these. So you can take these, like this demo application is amazing. And this may not be exactly what you need, but it's almost there. You can take this, build on top of this, make this yours. It's such a cool starting point because look, generative AI, at the end of the day, there's ChatGPT, there's Q, there's all these really cool models out there that we can talk to, these LLMs, but building it on your own can be daunting, like, a daunting task just to get started. So just seeing this, it's really cool watching the demo that there's these examples, you can get started, play with it, see what works for you, what doesn't, and then kind of take it in the direction you want to take it. I just wanted to add that, but continue on.
Yep, and the last feature that we have here in this sample document explorer is you can interact and ask questions for one specific document that you selected. And I can send a question here, like, when it comes to this document that I just selected, what are the key takeaways about AI from that document? And again, this interacting with the question and answering construct that I deployed. We are going through our knowledge base, getting the context, answering this, sending this prompt, get the answer from the model, and then streaming the response back to the user. So have an idea of this data is coming from the document that I selected here. And if we still have time, I can dive deep a little bit more about how the code is structured and give more information about how to deploy that. That's it.
Yes. Before you do that, let me just do a quick, in the top right of the screen, we have a QR code. If you can, give us feedback, let us know how you like the session. Just a quick scan of that QR code. We'd really appreciate it. But yeah, continue on.
Sure. So let me do this. I'm going to show you the CDK benefit. Like if you go to the bin, you're going to see the CDK specification, like how we are grouping those stacks that I mentioned before and how I'm deploying and compose this sample application. So pretty straightforward. Networking layer, just those two lines. Persistence, I'm sending all those parameters. And then the API, I'm using or referring to the resource that I created prior to this line. And if you go to the library folder, you can dive deep on how we are deploying those constructs and see how to interact with those things. So if I scroll down, you're gonna see we have S3, the open source. It's also defined here, the open source domain and how you're gonna restrict access to these and open source. And the API is where we define the construct per se. So you're going to see that we have here the Cognito that I mentioned before, that we are integrating our merged endpoint with Cognito for authentication and authorization. And if I keep going down, this is where I call the constructs. So I'm just reusing what I imported from the construct library and reusing this in my code. So instead of defining every single step in my application, I'm just reusing what I have available in the construct library. And we can see all the constructs here as well. So this is the summarization, and this is how we define the summarization and so on. And when it comes to the client application, and if I go back to my diagram here, if you want to get more details about how this application is implemented, like the client side of it, it's all defined inside this client app folder. So if you open here, you're going to see that the main entry point is this home.py file. And then for each page that you see on your left-hand side menu, we have a file defining that specific area of the screen. So just scan the code, have an idea how to send requests for GraphQL, how to subscribe to event, because we have real-time data consumption here. And most of those things are abstracted by those libraries that we provide as part of the client app. So it's an end-to-end solution. So you can see the construct in a simulated scenario.
That's amazing. This is super cool. And by the way, are you using CDK assets to bundle all of this and deploy it?
Yep. So if you want to deploy, like I'm using Cloud9 here because every pre-requirement is already fulfilled. Like if you go to the step-by-step, what are the requirements that we have, this is what we request. And to deploy is simple like this. And we have all those instructions in the repo. So all you need to do is clone the repo, install the dependency, and select to deploy all. And what we're gonna do here is deploy those three stacks that I mentioned, like the networking stack, a persistent stack, and the API stack.
And if I might add, one of the things that Hader kind of showed earlier, and probably one of the best value of the sample repo, is that you can, the observability portion, you can see the network call going into the backend, and then you can dig deep into the step function or the CloudWatch logs or the GraphQL calls, and then mutate that. And as you play and make this application meet your actual use case, I feel like that's the real, power of this sample application.
Yep. And what's going on here is we are creating transforming the code that we have in CDK and be ready to push the CloudFormation stack. And that's when you need to review what the resource that's going to be created on your behalf and deploy. And that's what I did before the call for the simple application that we are seeing here.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that, the CDK app, and I always talk about this, but, the CDK is a streamlined way to encapsulate your application code, your infrastructure code, all in one place. You're building your assets, your front end, your back end resources. The application code itself is all getting built when you deploy this CDK application, and it's getting deployed and then, connected to all the Lambda functions and everything that it's deploying. So super cool, a really cool use case. for the CDK. Another really good practice is to kind of modularize your components of the various resources that you're deploying through various stacks to have that isolation. And let's see, a question came in. Do you recommend to synthesize it first for deploy before you deploy? Does anyone want to answer that?
Yeah, I'd like to get this one.
Yeah, I think since this is a more complex application, it will always be good to generate the CloudFormation template. I don't know if...
Yeah, I would say for initial deploy, depends. If you want to see exactly what's going to deploy for you, it's good. But especially when you make change and you would like to see what's going to be included or updated, I recommend doing the synthesize before deploying.
And I'd probably just run a CDK diff. That's personally what I think is that's going to give you the clearest indication as to what is changing, what is being deployed. When you synthesize, you just get all that raw CloudFormation, which is like the assembly, the CloudFormation assembly code we call it. But when you run a CDK diff, it creates a change set in CloudFormation and then surfaces those details back to you via the CDK CLI, so you can really see, here's what I'm deploying, here's what's changing, and so on. So I think is that pretty much it, demo-wise?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
We showed how to use, how it was the components that we have and how to deploy, and hopefully, if you see any issue or would like to send a product feature request, just send via the GitHub repo.
Awesome. So guys, thank you again for jumping on today and walking through this. I am going to post these links here. So just again, if you want to get started, below this first link is going to take you to the construct GitHub repository, so you can see these various L3 and L2 constructs, how they work, if you want to get more familiar with them. And then, of course, we have the sample that Hader just walked through, which was really cool, here in this link below. So go there, and it's really easy to deploy, just CDK deploy. Just obviously make sure, again, there are costs associated with it. So if you're testing it out, be cautious, and destroy the resources when you're done. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. I will open it up. Does anyone, any parting words before we go? Oh, and also the top right or left, I don't know. I don't know directions when I'm here, but just please do hit that QR code. Give us your feedback. We'd really appreciate it. But any parting words anyone wants to share?
Yes. If you follow any of us on LinkedIn, we will be releasing a workshop that will also break down how to build this from scratch. And I feel like that will also get you leveled up to the CDK construct. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah. And we're really excited to see what you're going to build with those constructs. So any application that you build, please just send us a message on GitHub or LinkedIn and just let us know what you're building, and we can always refer to it in the repo as well.
Yeah. Again,
Amazing.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, y'all. We'll we'll see you tomorrow on the live stream, where we're going to talk about cross-account deployments with the CDK. We'll have Pahud join us once again, who is like a CDK fan favorite. Pahud's the best. So thanks again, everyone, for watching, and to everyone here that joined. Y'all are awesome. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.